Hey, what's up? I'm excited. Today we have Shane Kidwell, Dwell Mortgage, former firefighter. He's a coach in the mortgage industry, just an all-around great dude. He actually came through one of our programs. Boy, it's been a while now, over a year and a half ago, Man Wealth Immersion as well. So we have a bit of history going back, and excited to have him here today. Thanks for being here, Shane.
Thanks, Nate. You should have let off with alumni.
Alumni, yes.
Yeah, alumni, man. That's the most important thing,
Yeah, I
right?
suppose, but
Man Wealth
hey.
alumni.
You are. Once a Man Wealth, always a Man Wealth.
That's it, man. I still have my coat in my closet at home.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Well, to get us started here, I like to ask this question. Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What comes to mind? What's present for you when you think of championship leadership?
Man, so you didn't give me any questions in advance. That's a really good question.
No.
I love it, off the cuff. Man, I think the biggest thing about being a champion and being a leader, you can't be a leader without being a champion, right? And true champions, I think, are leaders. So those go hand in hand. I think when I think about all the people in my life who have been true leaders, they've been leaders by doing, not by saying.
Yeah.
And I think in whatever area, that's servant leadership, right? To its core, like servant leadership and extreme ownership. That's what a championship leader is.
Yeah, that's great. And who are some of the championship leaders that have been a part of your life, maybe have shaped or molded you, coached you, mentored you over the years?
Boy, I've had a bunch. You guys with Man Wealth were incredible. And it's like, I think there's seasons in your life, there's times in your life where somebody comes into your life for a specific reason at a specific time. And It might be something acute. It might be something long-term. Man Wealth was this acute. I was at a place in my life where like God had really just said, you need to do something to kind of shake yourself from your current trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. That was a really important piece of my journey. David Goggins, who is an amazing, I don't even know if I would call him a coach. He's more of like a mindset guru. Mm-hmm. And had an amazing 8-month journey with David where we really unpacked my childhood insecurities and, built me back up to the person who I think God intended me to be, who I was supposed to be from a mindset perspective.
Yep.
I've had some amazing business coaches throughout the years. Being a fireman, there were several people that were just amazing leaders. And in a blue collar job like that, it's probably a lot like the military. Those leaders aren't people that anyone else knows, right? Yeah. So I would take a bullet for these guys, legitimately. And I don't say that about very many people in my story. I had a fire captain who is now a deputy chief in Seattle Fire Department. He's an amazing man, the hardest working guy. We would train until our forearms couldn't make fists anymore. And he led by example. And so those are the types of people. And then my father, before he passed away, was a larger than life person who was an amazing leader as well. And my mom, my dad died and my mom stepped in and became the mom and the dad.
Yeah.
When I was 7 years old. And that's probably the quietest leadership I've ever been around. But it was actually the loudest impact in my life. But the quietest leader was my mom.
Yeah, it's neat that you say that or kind of put it that way, right? Because, championship leaders they all lead in very different ways, but yet very effective. And to say, very quiet, but very loud in the results, right? Yeah. And the impact probably more than anything. And then there's other leaders that are very loud, but yet, the impact is also very loud as well. So tell us a little bit, you talked about being a firefighter and like you said, I can definitely relate. There's first sergeants or, company commanders or in the military from my time, just men and women that you come across that love what they do, take it very seriously, lead by example, are tremendous, great leaders, but yet, not necessarily everyone has ever heard of them and never will. And that doesn't even matter to them, right? They're just, I think a championship level leader, they are who they are just because that's just what is the right thing to do, right? they're not worried about the likes of the comments on social media or the following. They're just doing what they see as right. And so yeah, talk to us about how did you become a firefighter? How long were you a firefighter? Maybe what did that experience as a firefighter, how did that shape and mold you to be super successful in what you do today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my journey started, I think that if you kind of looked at a chart of your life, you have these blips or these peaks and valleys. And definitely a valley for me was when my dad passed away when I was 7. So my dad was an entrepreneur, he was a majority owner and founder of a small airline company called Horizon Air. Got bought by Alaska Airlines and owned businesses throughout his life, was an inventor, has some patents with the U.S. Patent Office, was just an amazing, creative, like larger than life personality. And so being a son, like your dad, there's such a connection that like you can't explain. And to have that broken when I was 7, like was traumatic. Yeah. I think it caused, depression, some PTSD that later, came back out later in my life. It created a lot of insecurity because I didn't have that person that I was supposed to mold my life after. Mm-hmm. So now I'm looking at TV or other people to figure out what it means to be that man, that quote unquote man. And so it was a dramatic, at a very young age, put me on a trajectory. But what's in that DNA from your family was that like blue collar mentality. And that's really, I think, what drew me to be a fireman. So fast forward to high school, I'm a junior in high school, and I just didn't enjoy school. I liked breaking things. I liked building things. I liked doing things. Sitting in a classroom, talking about numbers that don't affect my life, I'm out on that, man. Like, I'm just out. And there was an Explorer program, and so half of my day, I was a volunteer fireman my junior year of high school, wearing like 25-year-old gear. It's probably like when you start out in the military and it's like you're wearing somebody else's old stuff, And I did that for a year. And at the end of the year, my instructor actually falsified my documents to allow me to be in an event for firefighters, professional firemen.
Yeah.
So I'm this 17-year-old kid with this 25-year-old gear doing a stair climb with all these grown men and women, right? And so that was like my first experience being a fireman. Then, fast forward a couple of years, I'm in college. I went to the University of Washington. And for some reason, again, when you don't have a father figure, it's almost like a wind pane. You kind of just go with what the climate is doing, right? Yeah, so then I got to make money. I got to be blue. I got to wear a suit. I got to be a suit and tie guy. So I thought I was going to be in business. Okay. Got into business and hated it. Like absolutely hated it in college. Took classes on business. It was the boringest thing ever. I thought, man, I don't want to wear a suit for my entire life. So started volunteering. Graduated college. I was a volunteer fireman, was working 2 jobs, going to school, volunteering as a fireman. I think I made $6 a call. So if I went on 2 calls that day, I made $12 for the day. And so then after college, it took me a couple years of really intensive preparation, study. I treated the process of becoming a professional fireman like college. Mm-hmm. I studied, I took notes, I practiced, interviewed, I recorded myself, because the process to become a fireman, like in Seattle proper, 5,000 people apply for 25 jobs.
Yeah, I believe it.
And then you go through a boot camp. It's a 15 to 16 week boot camp, and they'll fire 20 to 40% of those people. So from 5,000, it might get down to 18 people. Okay. And so I was in a small fire department for 6 years. I had a dream of working in the big city. Yeah. I always wanted to do that. And so then I reapplied for Seattle halfway into my 12-year career. Got hired on with Seattle, and I worked in Belltown, which is right below the Space Needle. And I was on the busiest aid car on the West Coast, at the busiest station on the West Coast. And man, I loved it for a time, for a season in my life. It was being a fireman. It's just like you can go anywhere and do anything and train and break things and like help people and have this really cool impact on people just for like a blip in their life. Mm-hmm. And they don't know who you are. They don't remember your name, but you can save their life. You can absolutely shift the trajectory of their life. And that was unbelievable. I learned how to use my hands. I think a lot of the things that my dad would have taught me, I learned as a fireman as an adult. Those skills, changing tires and things like that, running chainsaws. As a kid, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I did as an adult. And so it was an incredible time in my life. I loved it. Like, I still feel like a fireman. I mean, like, I accidentally kind of bumped into a 911 call on the freeway one time and helped a gal get out of a car upside down, and like
really?
was
Wow.
one of my old buddies there. And it kind of, like you being in the military, like you do something that's pseudo military and it brings up all those old feelings. So it was a huge blessing.
That's incredible. So what triggered the switch?
Yeah, boy. So, blue collar jobs can be incredible, but they are very non-entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad was an entrepreneur through and through, and had traveled the world buying airplanes and doing different things. And so it's almost like you can't fight your calling.
Yeah.
And it kept pulling and tugging at me. And I built a coaching platform for firemen when I was 23.
Did you really?
Them get hired to be firemen. And I think I had like 2 clients.
That's awesome.
I did make money on it. Like, I did get paid, and I would meet guys and coach them on how to work through the coaching process. And so the entrepreneurial spirit was always in me. It was always, kind of pushing itself to the surface. And after hurting myself on the job several times, pretty badly, having had some really challenging times in my marriage where, like, as a fireman, you go through this, it's a PTSD. It's an experience that's different from being deployed for a year, but it's very similar in how it manifests at home.
Yeah.
I would go home and it's like, my wife's complaining about the bills. And I'm like, you're complaining about the bills? You know what I just saw?
Right.
You know what I just did?
Yeah.
And so I had this pretty dramatic disconnect from, and it wasn't like I was doing anything intentionally wrong. I had been helping people, but nobody was helping me. Yeah. And so one day my wife had said, after just, a moment of exhaustion, and not to be like to attack, but just said, hey, I wish you could put as much time into me as you do into the people at the fire station. Yeah. And it was like, boom, man, like that hit me. And I was like, whoa, like, cause my dad had been a family man. My dad had loved my mom. My mom looked up to my dad. And I'm like, wow, like I'm not treating my wife the way I should, unintentionally.
Right.
Unintentionally. And so I made a decision at that point. I'd been in the mortgage industry for a couple of years, just dabbling. But I had grown my business. And I think I took a lot of my blue collar work ethic into a white collar job where most people are not organized. They're not powerful. They don't really own their day. They kind of let the day own them. And I just treated my mortgage business like my fireman job. Show up on time, punch in, punch out, wear your uniform. Like, consistency is how you can build your business. How do you scale? I just took all those things. And then I am entrepreneurial. I am marketing minded, and started growing my mortgage business while I was still full-time fireman. So my last 2 or 3 years, I was a full-time mortgage professional, building a team, operating a branch, and a full-time fireman at the busiest station on the West Coast. And something had to give, right? Yeah. I mean, I was working 80, 90 hours a week when I really look back at it, and I wasn't taking care of me. I wasn't taking care of my home. I was taking care of everyone else. And so I just had to make a decision. And I had a pretty powerful conversation with a business coach who said, can I speak frankly on this? Is this okay? Can I speak frankly, Nate? Is this cool?
Yeah.
Okay. He said, hey, Shane, you're skipping over hundreds to pick up pennies. And as we were talking through this conversation, I basically had talked myself into retiring, but couldn't make the decision. And he said, stop being such a pussy.
Yeah.
And like, for me, that's exactly what I needed to hear in that specific moment. I'm like, you're right. Like, I'm not betting on myself. I'm not confident enough. And this was before I met David Goggins and really worked on my mindset. This is before I went to Manwealth and really focused on like certain activities and ways to grow a powerful mind. And that conversation is what led me to take an early retirement, give up my pension, give up $100,000 a year job with full benefits, and to bet on myself and to be 100%, self-generation for my income.
Yeah. But that's, I talk a lot on this show really about those moments in life. I talk about with any championship leader, right? I tend to think of, football or Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, these coaches, these leaders that just continue to win year after year to the point where they really make it look easy. Although, it's like, it's not easy because no one else is doing that. and everybody's getting fired and cycled through year after year. But I really see it as like they weren't always there. They weren't always at the top winning. It took years and years of getting there and figuring it all out. But also, I think it takes the point where, they very easily could have went a different direction at some point and never realized their true potential. And I kind of looking at, when I hear you describe that moment, that decision, even that conversation, like, hey, when are you gonna stop being a pussy and like do this thing? But the reason you're not really, is, like you said, you got a 6-figure job, you got a great retirement pension lined up, like a lot of things in your favor. And it's hard to pull away from that and go do this other thing that you really know you want to do. But still to make that decision, because it's, in a way, it's kind of the safe play, right?
Yeah, I think the reality is, like, if we took a snapshot of American workers and we were really truly honest, and you said, hey, are you doing what brings you the most reward, and are you giving the most value? And like, I talked about this with one of my coaching clients. I said, like, you would be insulting your creator if you're not using your body and your mind to the best of whatever the creator gave you. Like, if you're made to like jack somebody up on a football field, if that's like there's people like, and you and I know several, you look at them, they're built differently.
Yes.
like they're just like, their hands are bigger, their shoulders are bigger. I don't have that. Like, I'm a big dude and I felt small. God gave them a frame to do something with that frame. God gave me a mind to do something with my mind. He gave me a work ethic. He gave you a work ethic. I think we would be insulting our creator if we don't use that to the fullest of what we've been given. And most people out there in the world, like, I could say I'm a fireman. Like, who doesn't want to be a fireman, right? Like, it's an amazing job. I'm making 6 figures. I'm doing really well in life. But that's not what God had intended me to do moving forward. And so for me, the intentions of what I was supposed to be doing in my life, I finally listened to that voice. I eliminated the distractions. I got a coach who basically, like, I like to say, it's like people look right here and they address what's right in front of them. Somebody has to say what's on the other side of that, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, do you realize on the other side of that small tree is something far greater? You're focused on this item, and so you're not seeing what the potential for your life, whatever that looks like, right? Whether that's financial wealth, health, impact in creating other leaders, whatever that looks like, you got to listen to that voice on your shoulder, the good voice. You've got to eliminate all the noise and then step out and bet on yourself. And it doesn't always work. Like, there's many times it hasn't worked for me. There's many opportunities where I've been just grinding to do what I know I'm supposed to do. And then comes the rewards and the fruits of that. Yeah.
Well said. And so let's talk more here about, so not only did you make that switch and become one of the best in the country at what you do inside of your industry, but also now you have Next Level Loan Officers, right? Which is this coaching platform that really took off and not that it was an overnight success, but like, you guys really went from 0 to 100 very fast and are doing well, and and you're continuing to grow. And I'm sure the vision for that is much bigger than where it's at, but you guys have done really well. There's 5 of you that started and kicked that off. And then we talked before this, and I don't know, how much but you have something else in the works as well. Like, you're always continually building, growing. And like you said, new ideas. Your dad had patents or has patents with the US, and it's just like, it's maybe part of your DNA, right? But what is the vision for you, having said all that? Like, where does Shane Kidwell really want to be, 5-10 years from now? Because I think championship leaders, like, if they have one thing, it's great vision, a greater vision than most. They can see things that others can't necessarily see. Maybe they have that magic eye that can see around the tree that's right in front of them for the bigger possibilities. What's the vision for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, for me in my mortgage business, so my vision was to create a brand that I could dictate the quality of. And that's where Dwell Mortgage came from. So there's a tree on the logo. It's representative of a redwood. And the redwood trees are some of the tallest trees in the world, and they have some of the shortest root structures. And so their foundation is made solid by intertwining with other redwoods. And I remember as a kid, after my dad passed away, we drove our Aerostar van through a redwood tree. I mean, these trees are massive, like massive.
What?
Yeah, no joke. And like, so a couple years ago, I was really going through a fight internally with, do I become the person that God intended me to be, or do I fall into what everybody else is doing and just coast? And I drove to the Redwoods by myself. I took my dog and I drove to the Redwoods. And so Dwell Mortgage came out of that moment.
Yeah.
And the goal for Dwell Mortgage was, like, our industry in the mortgage profession is dramatically changing. Like technology, like automation, all these different things are changing what a salesperson used to do in the mortgage industry versus what they're going to do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal with Dwell Mortgage, it goes back to that quote about Wayne Gretzky. Like, they asked Wayne, like, how was this guy so good? Not the biggest, not the tallest, not the fastest, maybe not the smartest. And Wayne said, I don't go where the puck is. I go where the puck is going.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I heard that. I go, that's my mind. And so Dwell Mortgage isn't focused on where we are today. It's built for where the industry is going in the future. So we do things differently. We listen to rap music. Like, we have fun. Like, we brand ourselves, and we don't wear suits and ties necessarily, right? Like,
yeah.
So my goal is to build Dwell Mortgage to be a regional powerhouse that does things differently and is fair, honest, gives consumers a legitimate good value while treating our loan officers, our mortgage bankers with unequivocal top talent, technology, and tools. And so that's Dwell Mortgage. The vision for that is, like, we'd like to be Mountain Standard Time Zone to the West Coast from just a vision perspective.
Yeah.
That's going to take a lot of work. You know, we're in a couple states right now. There's a ton of growth we could do with that.
Yeah.
My role in that is building up leaders. It's not about, like, you know, a lot of people, what's your goal? And it's like, I'm going to make $1 million in 3 years. That is so far from what gives me, like, juice.
Yeah.
I want to build leaders, and I want to equip people, because one day I sat down and I said, I was making a decision. I said, well, I got 20 people that work for me. And one of my friends said, dude, that's not true. You actually have like 50, because their spouses, their kids are counting on you to make the right decision. And so you think about that trickle down effect. If I have 50 employees and they all have a spouse and they have kids, I'm able to impact 150 people's lives and give them the opportunity. And so for me, one of my biggest things is I want to be charitable through wealth. The more I make, the more I can give. And so last year, Dwell Mortgage gave over $50,000 to local and national charities. And it wasn't like we overcharged our people to do that. I simply made less and took something out and gave it to those. And so that's Dwell Mortgage. Like, that's our vision, is building leaders and charity through wealth. We are building an insurance agency. You know, Next Level Coaching has been another offshoot of Leaders Building Leaders. Yeah. Like Ken Travis, Kellen Vaughn, Sean Zalmoff, Darren Copeland, the rest of the group. Like, our goal, like, I mean, if we just wanted to make money, we would just do loans. Like, you know, that's, you don't I think anybody who does coaching or advising, you and I both know, like, we're not in this because it's like the money is the key, you know, like, driving force,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And that'll come over time, but at
the
same time, you got to be in it for the right reasons to really impact and people. Transform lives, like really touch lives. Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that for me, like, when we got into coaching, we started it from probably not necessarily, we were like, hey, we can do something, we can make a few bucks and this will be fun. Right.
Yeah.
And then you sit down with a coaching client whose, you know, son or daughter just found out they had cancer and they're struggling in their business to make a living. And then you help them get out of that. And they come back to you and they say, I want to pay you more money for the coaching because you guys are doing so great. And we say, no, we're good. Just give, you know, trickle down to others. And they're crying. And it's like, that's what Next Level, that's what real true coaching is all about. Yeah. You're going to make a living. And if you're really good at what you do, your time is going to be very valuable and people are going to reward you for that. Yep. But like, that's the byproduct, right? Like, and I think you guys talk about this a lot. The dollars follow the value. Yeah, the value doesn't follow the dollars, right? Like, it's always the other way around to do it in the right way. And that's been our goal. And that's what, you know, we're 18 months roughly into this thing. We have 125 coaching clients with unlimited potential to grow. And like, we just have fun together. We meet, you know, and we have fun. We work, we butt heads, we have healthy conflict. And we come out with ideas, and it's like we sharpen that axe. So when they go back out there and they go to war against everyone else, like, they're battle-hardened warriors in their field.
Yeah, and like you said, you're doing life with some incredible people along the way too, right? which doesn't hurt, to be surrounded by other men and women like that are on kind of that same path and trajectory as well.
Yeah, I think that too, and you can attest to this, this is a very unique community. Like whether you're just being a leader, you're in coaching, you're in sales, like the true winners. And you and I probably would classify winning in a vastly different way than society. And we've seen it in our previous lives, military and the fire department, the guys who were winners, the women who were winners, like the true leaders were so different. And man, it's amazing when you get in this community of people, this tribe, there are so many incredibly powerful, unique people that come across your path for a short time or for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so you talked a little bit about really building up other leaders. And so I want to talk about that too, because I think for the championship leaders, but let's be real, like if championship leadership is not common. It's the top of the top, the elite of the elite. It's that 1% that just have this different perspective on everything, and that's the reason that they do succeed and win. But I think the natural tendency for a lot is more of this scarcity mindset where, man, if I'm a leader, I don't want to pull up other leaders or build other leaders because they might pass me by, or they might take my job, or they might go off and do their own thing and just have that kind of a mindset versus, no, I want powerful leaders around me, because number one, it's going to force me to grow and to rise at the same time, to keep up, but also it's just going to help all of us win and go further together. So where did that come from for you? Because I think that's a powerful conversation that needs to be had more. This, less insecurity, less scarcity, and more like, hey, we can all win together if we all grow together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really hard to be a championship leader. I think that because the reality is there's more times than not, it's not fun. Like it's a lot of hard, intense, but really good conversations that to the outside world, they would say is unhealthy when we know it's extremely healthy, right? Yeah. I think it's like we started talking as a group within Dwell about making 1% changes in your life. Like, and what people try to do is they go, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. Well, then they lose 0. In fact, they typically gain weight, right?
Yeah, right.
Whereas if you said, I'm going to lose 1 pound this week, like how much simpler is that? And I think championship leaders and a championship leadership mindset is one where we make small changes that have dramatic impacts.
Yep.
It's like, I give the analogy, it's like one of those drag racer cars. They have the little teeny wheels in the front, the huge wheels in the back. They go 200 plus miles an hour. They're going so fast that a slight shift in the trajectory with that steering wheel, it puts them in a completely different place.
Yep.
I think that's the championship leadership mindset, is understanding that like there's going to be bumps along the way. Like it's not a straight line. It zigs and zags.
Yeah, right.
But like small incremental changes that I consistently do over time, like being a man of my word, having difficult, challenging, intense conversations, and listening to that voice when you know you need to do something that's not fun to do, whether that's work out, whether that's seek a counselor, whether that's pay a coach, whether that's lose weight, stop eating what you love. Like you listen to that voice, you make small changes to that steering wheel and it shifts your trajectory. And I mean, there's very few people like that group becomes very, very small when you start to look at things that way. And I think for people who are like, well, yeah, that sounds great. You guys are, you're wired for that. You're in the military, you're firemen. They're going to say, well, I can't do that. I think you can do it by making 1% changes. I think you do that by being a servant leader. My dad, when I was young, I remember that we had a huge snowstorm and there was like a foot of snow and all of our neighbors were stuck in. My dad said, I'm going to go drive to the grocery store. I'm going to buy the entire neighborhood groceries. Now, to him, he did that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But his son saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And now, like, my mindset is I'm always going to be generous because it's in my DNA to be generous.
Yeah.
So the leadership started 30 years ago. And now I'm able to, like, I'm just naturally, I love giving stuff away. I love being generous, like with my time and my resources, because it was built in me. That's a championship leader. And no one's
Absolutely.
ever going to know that. No one's ever going to be like, that guy, he's on YouTube now because he bought groceries for his neighborhood. But that's a championship leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up something else to me. Your dad, it's like you said, I think that was just who your dad was. And he wasn't doing that for this, oh, look at me. He wasn't probably even doing it to so that you could see it.
Not at all.
Not that that was, it's a great side effect of it, but he was just doing it because that's who he is, right? And this servant leadership and just showing the heart that he had that you have as well. But what it brings to mind for me is like we are always just constantly communicating a message, right? And that's what he was doing. He was communicating a message to you without saying anything, without maybe even realizing it. And look how the impact that it has had on you, which actually has had that impact on many other people, probably thousands, and probably eventually will be millions because of a decision that he made back then, just because that's who he was.
And it's a 1% decision, right? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like he did anything grandiose.
Yeah.
He just did a 1% decision, and that 1%, when you're a leader and you have a trajectory and you surround yourself with people who are leaders to be, right? Like you see people, then you're like, man, that person is just so primed to be a leader, and you just make small incremental changes in your life and then in their life. It's amazing what it can do.
Well, let's talk real quick. What are some characteristics that you are looking for in leaders? Because you're continually building a team, like you said, and building other leaders. Is there something that you are typically looking for? Is it just something that, like, when you see it, you just know it? Is it, yeah?
Man, part of it is, like I dealt with so many patients as a fireman. Like you start to really be able to read people.
Yeah.
Like your bullshit meter is really, really effectively working.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like,
Yeah.
you can smell that out a mile away, especially when people are trying too hard. I think there are some characteristics like, for us, extreme ownership. It's a phenomenal book, but it's an even better mindset. Like no matter what, if you're a leader, if something is wrong, it's your fault. It's your fault. And don't argue about it. It's your fault. And then move on and find a way so that doesn't happen again. So we're looking for people that are extreme, like take extreme ownership. There's another great book. It's Ideal Team Player.
Okay.
For those in business, it's a phenomenal blueprint in a very simplistic way of what to look for people that are going to make great teammates. It's humble, hungry, and smart.
Yeah.
It's emotional intelligence.
It's
for me. What's that?
I've heard that before. Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book. And like the hungry piece really comes back to my blue collar work as a fireman. Like we do. And this goes back to what you guys, like, again, it's so funny. Like you go to Man Wealth and you hear these phrases or these core values and you go, I think that way. You just packaged it in a really cool message.
Yeah. Right.
Like we do what's required to get what's desired.
Yep.
And we work until the job is done. Like we just work until it's done, not until we're finished. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was David Goggins who said that to me. Is like, hey man, you just work until it's done. That's military, right?
Yeah.
That's being a fireman. Like I can't quit in the middle of a CPR and be like, you know what? I'm uncomfortable now. It's cold outside. I have my back and there's a heroin addict yelling in my ear.
Yeah. Yeah.
People die. And so the reality is, and like, that as well, Nate, like we have seen things that it wasn't even necessarily like we were thrown into situations where the reality was the choice that we had to make was a choice that overall like shaped our lives outside of that situation. Doing what's required to get what's desired, like doing that CPR in an alleyway that was uncomfortable, like the result that came out of that was so powerful. I want people that gravitate, the people who gravitate towards me that I gravitate towards are those that they work until the job is done.
Yeah.
They take extreme ownership. Yeah. They don't mind getting into a little bit of a tussle, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like, man, like we have so many weak-minded, sensitive people in this world.
Yeah. Amen.
and I was that way. I was so insecure. After my dad passed away, I gained a lot of weight. I had thick bifocal glasses. I got picked on all the time. All the time. I can still, like, you say a specific name of a bully from 5th grade, I want to go to war, right? Like still. And like for me, like I found out that like I have self-worth just because I exist. And so like I tell people at my mortgage company, when you walk through that door every morning, there's a bucket of self-worth that gets dumped on you when you walk in, and it's always refilling. You're always worthy. Like you're always worthy. It doesn't matter what mistake you make. So when you walk into your day knowing I have value, when somebody says something to you, you're going to be like, you know what? Go fly a kite. I have value. Yeah. And so these things that affect other people no longer affect you. Like the politics, the market, the weather, it's irrelevant.
Right.
It's irrelevant. And so we want people that have those core values. And I think that like, now that doesn't mean those people are easy to work with.
Yeah. Right.
They're unique.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But we don't want normal people.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be driven and, strong-willed and all of that, but that's what you want. That's what you're looking for. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was powerful. Let's wrap this up here with this. What are 1 to 2 things that you could really leave with the listeners and frame this up? The listeners, I believe, are people like ourselves and want to grow, want to be better, want to be championship leaders, entrepreneurs, men and women. What could you leave with them to really impact their world and help them to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, like you're never going to be the best version of yourself, the version that the creator made, that he intended you to be, without accepting where you currently are. Mm-hmm. Like I found out several years ago that I had clinical depression, had ADHD, and I wasn't where I wanted to be in my life. I could have used that as an excuse to just stay where I was and coast and cruise. I took it head on. And I think that like to be a leader, you first have to be a follower and get in the mud. Yes. And I went to a counselor every week for like 8 months. And I was working 2 full-time jobs. I was working 90 hours a week, and I made time every week to drive an hour and a half to see a counselor for an hour to tell me how messed up my mind was to go back to work. So you got to start from a place of accepting where you currently are, because you'll never get where you want to be if you're not realistic at where you currently are. I think that's step 1.
Love it.
Step 2 is you need to find a tribe of powerfully minded people that are a little farther down the river than you are, mm-hmm. and like come from a place of humility, come from your place of acceptance of where you are, and like get on, like just latch on to them. And like with David Goggins, like I literally heard about him through a podcast. Somebody else had mentioned that they knew him. The old Shane would have been like, man, that guy's a badass. Wish I could talk to him. Right. The new Shane said, I'm going to message this guy and reach out to him, and what the hell, let's see what happens. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it turned into a very intense, powerful time in my life. He would make me sweat on the phone. I don't think we would say that we left it as friends, because that wasn't the intention, but he left me in a very powerful place from a mindset perspective. Yeah. Those are the types of decisions that you make when you're comfortable where you are, because you know where you're going. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's powerful, and make those 1% changes. Like you're never going to be, Steve Bezos, a billionaire. You don't make $1 billion in a day. You make $1, then you make 2, then you make 3, and you're working out of your garage. And then pretty soon you're not working out of your garage. Right. And that's 1% changes. And pretty soon that compounding interest on those 1% changes makes dramatic impact.
Yeah, that's incredible advice. I love that. Yeah, thank you so much. What are some ways that the listeners can follow you, get a hold of you if they want to reach out? Maybe it's even inside of Next Level Loan Officers or Dwell Mortgage and building your team. Yeah, what are some ways that they can reach you and contact you? Yeah,
man. So, and thank you for just giving me the opportunity to be here and share. Man, like you've got an incredible story that we didn't talk about at all.
Yeah, that's the point, brother.
We have a lot of similarities in a lot of things too. And so it's really cool how that works out. But, for me, obviously, like I'm a grower, like I'm always growing everything I'm doing, whether it's our coaching, my mortgage company, just every area of my life I'm coaching, nonprofits that we work with. I think Facebook or LinkedIn would be the best, the easiest way to do that. Just send me a private message. I would love to connect. I always make time when I have time. Yeah. And I just love just reaching out to people and just like hearing their story, because I feel too, one thing that I probably failed to mention was I have grown the most because I've learned from others. Mm-hmm. And man, like, you can learn from everyone that you talk to.
Absolutely.
Everyone that you talk to, no matter if it's a heroin addict in an alley in Seattle at 2 o'clock in the morning, or a single mom trying to raise 2 boys after a dad passed away. Everybody has something that you can take away. And so anybody who reaches out to me, man, like they might be reaching out to me thinking I'm going to give them something, and the reverse happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an incredible shift. Once you can make that in your life to really, find those lessons in everywhere you go and in every interaction that you have. When's the book coming? You got an incredible story, man.
Dude,
You've had to have thought about writing a book, haven't you?
I'm in the process.
You are. All right. I like it.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I was like, dude, you got to have a book here coming soon. So that's great. Can't wait to see that. Thank you so much. We'll get all those links to social media so that people can find you inside the show notes as well. But really appreciate your time, Shane. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, you bet.